Chapter 149, Longevity Noodles. Just looking at the expressions of the people around him, he could guess with his toes how shocked everyone was in their hearts, and the smile on Jiang Swining's face barely hung a faint crack. She wanted to take care of it. But when she thought of Xie Wei and the price of accommodating, Jiang Swining didn't dare to give it away with a kind smile, and politely cleared up the relationship. "I don't know the prince well, so please don't joke with the prince." Joke. A woman's face changes faster than a book. "A while ago, I said, I'll cover you when you go to the capital." Xiao Dingfei's eyes rolled, and he muttered in his heart, "You can think about it with your brain and know that there is a reason for this, and Jiang Swining is stupid to be embarrassed with him in front of everyone's eyes." So he willingly changed into the shameless scoundrel face that everyone was familiar with before, and muttered, "The beautiful girl in the capital is arrogant, difficult to tame." Someone behind him changed his face. Shenju, the king of Linzi, stood in the back, because he had been entrusted by Yan Lin to take care of Jiang Swining, and he didn't know the inside story. He just thought that Xiao Dingfei was obsessed, and took advantage of others between words. His brows furrowed, and he was rarely a little majestic, and said in a slightly cold voice, "Second, Miss Jiang is the favorite companion of the imperial sister, Miss Jiang Shilang's mansion, and she must not be the sun of the world. Ladies and ladies are going to greet the Queen Mother, so go as soon as possible." Shenju wore an apricot-colored brocade robe today, with a golden crown and jade belt, and he was elegant and handsome. Jiang Swining's gaze crossed Xiao Dingfei and looked at him, and met his gaze. The other party was also stunned, and then bowed slightly to her. Jiang Swining's heart jumped. It's not that there is any deep meaning in this gaze, but when this once familiar face appears in front of him, even if he knows that he has nothing to do with this person in this life, he will still be dragged back to the memory of his previous life by his gaze, and he sighs a little embarrassed. In the previous life, Wen Jiu had a miscarriage, and Shen Lang had no queen, and finally passed the throne to Shenju, the younger brother of a fellow mother. In this life, Wen Jiu avoided disaster. If she gave birth to the prince smoothly, Shen Lang would have a queen, but I was afraid that the choice of the prince would not be Shenju's turn. Does His Royal Highness the King of Linzi in front of him know? His fate, unconsciously, was gently flicked by the hands of others, blowing, and turning a big bend. Jiang Swining closed her eyes in time, did not show anything unusual, only bent down with everyone to salute, passed by the children of these princes and nobles, and went back to the direction of Sining Palace. Shenju was stunned. He couldn't help but look back at Jiang Swining, but when he saw that this Jiang Er's girl, who had only been in a few faces, had a graceful figure and a thin back, she could still tell at a glance even if she walked among the crowds, and her eyes slowly showed a little confusion. I always felt that in that eye, there was a deep sadness. Maybe he was stunned for a moment, right? Xiao Shu walked out not far away, but her face was still angry, and she turned her head as if she wanted to say something to Jiang Swining. However, Jiang Swining had expected it. At the moment when Xiao Shu turned to face her, she already had a little smile on her lips, and took the lead in attacking Xiao Shu, and hit a rake. The original person who heard the legend of the Kuagong mansion was not forgotten by the prince when he was young, but he was a prodigy. I can't imagine that now that I have returned to the capital, I am a frivolous prodigal with frivolous words. Why can't the government discipline and discipline well? Everyone. Xiao Shu. No matter how many words I had in my stomach, I was blocked, and I forgot what I wanted to say for a while. I haven't seen him for nearly a month, and when I come back, Jiang Swining is still the Jiang Swining who makes people helpless and gritted her teeth with hatred. Asterisk. Jiang Swining thought that she would see Shenzai when she went to Sining Palace, but when she followed everyone in to ask for peace, she raised her eyes but didn't find anyone beside the Queen Mother. The old witch had just recovered from a serious illness, and her expression was a little sad. After accepting their invitation, he only asked Xiao Shu a few words, and unusually didn't even mention Shenzai, let alone beat them to read for the eldest princess, so he waved his hand and told them to step back. Just came out of Sinning Palace, Jiang Xuaning's brows furrowed. Apparently she wasn't alone. Zhou Baoying's little bun was bulging, and she was also a little puzzled. Why didn't you see Her Royal Highness the eldest princess today? Xiao Shu didn't answer. Chen Chuyi smiled meaningfully, the big joy in the palace. His Royal Highness will soon go to the Huns and relatives. These days are making preparations. I haven't been out of the palace for almost half a month, so naturally I didn't come to the Queen Mother to say goodbye to us. Zhou Baoying covered her mouth and let out an ah. Ya Rong blinked, and she didn't know whether she really didn't understand or fake, so she whispered, I just want to go and kiss, but I don't even invite the Queen Mothers and, isn't it a little inappropriate? Jiang Xuaning glanced at her coldly. Yu looked at Jiang Xuaning's face, and inevitably gloated, I said that I was going to make peace, but who doesn't know His Highness's temper? It's just a matter of family and country, how can His Highness be capricious? Alas. She let out a fake sigh. Jiang Xuaning only felt that the palm of her hand was itchy, and she wanted to give her 2 slaps to her cheap mouth, so that she could be happy. But it is true that this is not the same as it used to be. She forcibly suppressed this anger, sneered, but looked at Xiao Shu. I'm waiting for His Highness's companion. I entered the palace in the new year. I should go and say hello to His Highness, right? If it was before, with Xiao Shu's delicate temperament, he would definitely agree with Jiang Xuaning's ambiguity. However, the holy decree of letting Shenzai go to totter and make peace has been given. For an eldest princess who was about to leave this palace and had almost fallen out with the Queen Mother and the Emperor, even though she was really familiar with each other in the past, she finally smiled and said lightly, now Your Highness is upset, and even the Holy Lord and the Queen Mother are gone, so why bother me? This style of not leaking a drop of water really disgusted Jiang Xuaning, and she simply didn't even pretend to be face, but said coldly, what excuse are you looking for? Miss Xiao's ability to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages is top-notch. Just don't go. Is anyone going with you? She turned her gaze to the others. Chen Chuyi has always stood on Xiao Shu's side and didn't make a sound. Ya Rong lowered her head in fear. Zhou Baoying twisted her eyebrows and looked at Xiao Shu and Chen Chuyi, as if she was a little puzzled and very embarrassed. Yu snorted coldly and didn't move. Fang Miao quickly took out a copper coin from her sleeve, shook it in her palm, closed her eyes and recited something. Jiang Xuiwai's body moved, but after glancing at Jiang Xuaning, she thought that the eldest princess was friendly with her, but she was afraid that she would not be very happy with herself, so she dispelled the idea of going out. She pondered for a moment and said, I don't have a good relationship with His Highness, so I don't dare to go rashly. If Sister Neng sees His Highness, please ask Your Highness for me. Jiang Xuaning glanced at her, but did not answer. After waiting for a moment, no one stood up or answered, so she sneered, brushed her sleeves and left. Walking out more than 10 steps away, there was an urgent shout from behind, come out, go up to the east. Wait, Zhang Er girl, a great nobleman, wait for me. She looked back, and it was wonderful. The well-dressed but full of godly habits of the girl carried the corner of her skirt and hurriedly ran towards her, and raised the copper plate to her, panting slightly, but smiling mysteriously, the hexagram tells me that I should go with you. Among the so many companions of Yang Zhizai, only Fang Miao seems to be the most unreliable one. No matter what he does, he must first ask God for a fortune before making a decision. Jiang Xuaning's perception of this person has always been quite subtle. Is it true that people's lives and luck can be counted, or are they just asking God to ask for excuses for their decisions that seem to have nothing to do with the stakes? She looked at Fang Miao for a moment, and finally smiled at her slightly, didn't ask more, and went straight to Mingfeng Palace. Asterisk. Jiang Xuning was really worried about Shen Zai. During this time in the palace, Shen Zai was taking care of her and treating her well. She is not a heartless person, how can she be at ease? It was getting dark. When she and Fang Miao walked to Mingfeng Palace, there was already a lamp outside. In the shadow of the lamp, I saw that a female official standing outside the dormitory and quietly wiping away the tears from the corners of her eyes. I hadn't seen her for nearly a month, and she seemed to be much haggard. Isn't that Su Shang'ai, who has always been close to Shen Zai? Jiang Xuning's heart sank, and she stepped forward and saluted. Su Shang'ai, can His Royal Highness be in the palace? The corners of Su Shang'ai's eyes were still a little red, and when she raised her eyes to see her, she was a little surprised. Second Miss Jiang, who are you? Jiang Xuning said, I entered the palace today and came to greet His Highness. Su Shang'ai has always had a stern and expressionless face, but when she heard this, she almost burst into tears, so she only took them to the palace, and even choked up a little. Your Highness was still talking about girls during the New Year. It's great that you can come to see Your Highness. The outer head house is brightly lit. The Mingfeng Palace is a little dim, only 2 or 3 lamps are lit, and walking in winter even gives people a bleak illusion. Jiang Xuning shuddered. A slender figure in front of him landed on the dark and smooth ground. Shen Zai stood in front of a screen wearing a light yellow flying phoenix pattern palace dress, although only a little bit of light shone on the delicate embroidery thread of the palace costume, it also set off a bit of brilliance. She was really a lady of the sky, and she was noble. She was looking up at the screen, and she seemed to be a little distracted. Su Shang'ai entered the internal communication. She looked back slightly, and when she saw Jiang Xuning, who she hadn't seen in January, asking her for peace, she wasn't much surprised, as if she had been all this time, and naturally laughed. Ning Ning is here. At this moment, Jiang Xuning mourned in her heart. It's just because Shen Zai's face turned around was as calm as promised, without ripples. There is no longer the playful and noisy and even a bit unreasonable posture of the past, as if he has no interest in anything, and there is nothing to do. It was a feeling of burnout. It's like peeling away the bright colors of a person's appearance, leaving only a miserable gray inside. Her guilt and shame suddenly poured out. Shen Zai, who was so good to her, was still trapped in the palace. How could she dare to take advantage of tongues whose battle to exterminate the heavenly sect and flee to the ends of the earth? In her previous life, she had personally seen Shen Zai go to Tatar and kiss. The envoys and guards who saw off their relatives meandered from the palace to the outside of the city. But when he returned, it was a cold coffin. Jiang Xuning's tears fell unexpectedly. Shen Zai walked over and took her hand. The scar under the corner of her eye was no longer covered with fat powder, and under the light of the light and shade, it was a scar on her cheek that was scarred by the shaky society and the bleeding rivers and mountains. She led her to the screen. Look, soon I will go to the other end of Yanmen Pass. It turned out to be a map, depicting with ink the territory of the Tatars outside the Yanmen Pass. Jiang Xuning could identify the small words on the side that were used by foreigners. So I remembered that when the Tatars were in harmony, they had ordered the envoys to send a Tatar map to Shenlang. The Central Plains has illusions since ancient times, and offering the map is equivalent to offering the territory and land drawn on the map. Shenlang is an ambitious monarch. However, giving up a mere royal princess can exchange for the submission of Tatars, so why not? It's a pity that he made peace with the Tatars after all, and within a few years, the Tatars tore up the peace treaty and raised troops to attack. Shen Zai, the eldest princess with the blood of the great Jian royal family, naturally sacrificed under the sword of power. Jiang Xuning wanted to speak, but couldn't. Shen Zai smiled shallowly. I still want you to comfort me, but I don't want to shed tears when I see me, but I want to bother to comfort you. I heard that today is your birthday. is it okay to cry like this? Good things have been unlucky for you to cry, and this princess is not to follow. She asked the palace people to bring in the wine and food. Then he took Jiang Xunning's hand and glanced at Fang Miao, but he didn't ask others why he didn't come, but said, I'm here, and I just drank 2 cups tonight, just to celebrate your birthday. Fang Miaozi and Shen Zai don't have a good relationship. After all, there are many more powerful companions in Yang Hizai, and she can't get her turn no matter how she arranges, so although Shen Zai doesn't take care of her more, she doesn't mind. The palace people set up wine and food. She sat down with Jiang Xuning and drank with Shen Zai. I probably know that the atmosphere is not good at the moment, so I try to say something funny to make the two of them happy, and occasionally I can laugh. After 3 rounds of drinking, all the troubles are thrown away. All 3 were drunk. Fang Miao had the worst amount of wine, and the first one lay on the table. Shen Zai was also drunk, and when she saw Fang Miao falling, she left and then pulled Jiang Xuning to walk out of the palace gate to see the 16th moon, but she fluttered under her feet and sat down on the steps outside. The night was deep and the steps were wet. Jiang Xuning drank a lot of wine, fainted for a while, but the more she drank, the more sober she became, and she also sat in front of the steps, accompanying her, looking up at the cold frost moon in Zhongtian. Shen Zai seemed to feel a little cold, and gently hugged her arm. There was a faint voice overflowing, Ning Ning. Jiang Xuning didn't dare to look back, for fear of facing a pair of teary eyes, so she only said, Your Highness, I'm here. Shen Zai muttered, I'm so afraid that I won't be able to see you if I go. Jiang Xuning looked at the miserable white moon, let it shine on her cheeks stained with wine, and did not speak for a long time. Tears wet her neck. It was Shen Zai who sighed with a smile, sometimes I really hate to be born in the emperor's family. Jiang Xuning trembled, but at this moment, there was also great courage in her chest to rush up, which made the crazy thought in her heart pop up again, and lured her to speak, Your Highness, if you don't go to kiss, I'll help you, run away, okay. Shen Zai's face was next to her neck. The person seemed to be drunk, and a vague laugh came out of his throat, well, Ning Ning took me away and flew high. Heavy on the shoulders. It was Shen Zai who finally slept like Fang Miao. Jiang Xuning sat stiffly in front of the steps for a long time, waiting for the cold dew to wet her eyelashes. Su Shang'ai on the side came over to help the drunk Shen Zai. She took the hand of the palace people, got up, and together with Fang Miao, who was awakened, drank half a bowl of sobering soup, and the palace people of Mingfeng Palace carried the lantern and sent it back to Yang Hizai. Fang Miao is 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow, I don't know the southeast and northwest, as soon as I return to my room, I fall asleep. Jiang Xuning entered the house, but her consciousness was still extremely clear. She lit a lamp, washed her face with water, and stood in front of the copper basin where the water waves gradually calmed down, but stared at the reflection in the basin for a long time. Until a soft knock on the door woke her up. Knock knock. In the middle of the night, someone stood outside her door and asked in a low voice, Can Miss Zhang fall asleep? It was a shrill voice, and when you heard it, you knew that it was a eunuch in the palace. Jiang Xuning still had water droplets on her face, and her pupils shrank sharply. Who? The eunuch outside said, I'll give you longevity noodles. Jiang Xuning was stunned for a moment. Longevity noodles. She was suspicious, and when she opened the door, she saw that it was a little eunuch. The face is very raw, wearing the clothes of the imperial dining room, and carrying a food box in his hand, which is also the shape of the food box in the imperial dining room. How many people can still be called to the imperial dining room in the middle of the night? And in this deep palace, who knows that today is her birthday? She took the food box from the little eunuch's hand, and felt hot flashes under her eyes in a trance, so she only lowered her eyes and said, It's hard work, Her Royal Highness Princess Ye is still worried. The little eunuch buried his head in some cringe, but when he heard this, he raised his eyes in surprise, opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, and finally closed his mouth tightly. He remained silent and quietly retreated. Jiang Xuning didn't notice this detail, and she didn't think about it deeply, so she just closed the door, sat down at the table, and took off the lid of the food box. Simple single bowl of noodles. The noodle soup is made of boiled chicken broth, a poached egg lying on the side, some tender green onions are sprinkled on the noodles, and the knife cuts the finely chopped meat and stirs it in. It's steaming hot, with layers of incense. Jiang Xuning picked up the pair of silver chopsticks in the food box, picked them up and ate a few bites, but she couldn't taste what it was. Only the tears fell into the bowl as if they were broken, mixed into the noodle soup, and the more you ate it, the saltier it became. In the end, holding the empty bowl, he actually cried a lot. I just cried silently. Sitting in the cold night, listening to the sound of jade leakage outside dripping through the 3 watches, it was a new day.